Mr. Vaknin, I have a question for you.
The answer is no.
Damn it. I will offer you Jaffa cakes.
The answer is yes.
There is
This was behavior modification, by the way.
who asked for manipulation tactics?
Yes,
Yes, there
exactly.
you go.
Jaffa cakes.
Jaffa cakes. There is a concept out there that's bandied about of cultural Marxism, which is a kind of a conspiracy theory. You have a different concept, though, and I think it's a cleaner concept, which is malignant egalitarianism. So I just wanted to ask first, do you think there is any merit to the conspiracy theory of cultural Marxism?
I don't think there's any merit to conspiracy theories, because conspiracy theories fulfill a psychological need, not any scientific need. Or they're not about investigating reality, they're about satisfying certain pathologies. So no conspiracy theory merits any in-depth investigation. Malignant egalitarianism is an observed fact, not a theory. So I answered the first part.
Mm-hmm.
Jaffa cake.
They're over there. It's
Where's my
delayed
Jaffa cake?
We're doing a delayed gratification
She's eating my Jaffa
exercise.
cake.
She's eating your cake. It's delayed gratification. I'll bring you one. So do you think that cultural Marxism is the idea, isn't it, that there are people out there who are trying to flatten everything down in a way that makes everything equal, equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. You don't think that there is actually a conspiracy running, that there's Marxists out there who are trying to do that to society? You'd say there's just...
I do think that things are being flattened out. I do think, as we discussed yesterday, that there is what I call identicalness, where people feel that they are in the same position to know the truth or to know facts or to create theories as any other person. But I don't think it's. I think it's the inevitable outcome of specific technologies, and these technologies, I think, are the outcome of cultural narcissism. So I think the first mover and shaker, prima causa, the first reason, was the rise of narcissism, and because narcissism was rising, people created technologies to cater to their narcissistic needs, and these technologies empowered certain segments of a population that had no access previously to other people. And then these people interconnected, and they created a critical mass, etc., etc., etc. It was a snowball thing. It's like asking if some specific snowflakes created this snowball. No, it just happened. It's very menacing, very threatening, threatens the existence of a species, in my view. But it's an utter byproduct of other processes.
So where we see the parallels between a movement towards this, because they share similar outcomes, don't they? Cultural Marxism, malignant egalitarianism. You actually see, you would say both are manifestations of an overriding move towards narcissism at a cultural level.
I don't believe there's a cabal, a group of people, a committee who meet in secret and design programs, educational, intellectual, or otherwise, to flatten our knowledge. I don't believe in any of this. I do believe that technology reflected processes like narcissism that created the very same outcomes. The outcomes have been misinterpreted, and then there was a conspiracy theory. It's like no doubt Kennedy was shot, but then you can have it two ways. Either you adopt the Warren Commission conclusion that he was shot by a single shooter, or you adopt a conspiracy theory. But the fact that a conspiracy theory leads to the same outcome doesn't render it truthful.
Right.
But I think that there's a series of sociological developments that threaten our existence as a species. And these are the developments that we discussed yesterday. So I don't know if you want to reiterate them, or you prefer to go some other way.
Yeah, no, I think it's worth. I think it's worth talking about some of them. Maybe the first thing would be to just explain exactly what malignant egalitarianism is.
Malignant egalitarianism is the counterfactual, not true, conviction or belief that everyone has equal access to the truth, to facts, and to knowledge. And therefore, everyone is equal to everyone, and everyone can leverage this access to be anything they want to be. It's a compounded series of statements, each one of which is utterly untruthful. It is not true that everyone has the same access to knowledge, facts, and the truth. It is not true that even if you have such an access, you are equally qualified to interpret and understand what you are accessing. It is not true that even if you are qualified to access and interpret what you see, that this renders you, in effect, omnipotent, and that you can make of yourselves whatever you want to be. These are mantras, these are slogans of a narcissistic age, an age which affected the education system, especially in the United States, where children are taught that they can be anything they want to be, where they are taught that the fact that they have access to the biggest library in human history, the internet, renders them as knowledgeable and as capable as any expert or any intellectual or any scientist. And therefore, they owe no respect or they don't owe anyone anything. They don't have to listen, they don't have to learn. A depreciation of learning. So you go to even Ivy League universities, the standards have been lowered dramatically. Anyone can enter today, essentially, an Ivy League university. Anyone can graduate, and everyone does, and is dog. Experts and intellectuals are denigrated, ignored, mocked. All kinds of conspiracy theories, occult pseudosciences, and other fields of human expertise, like baseball results, have the same standing like physics, or literary criticism, or archaeology. It's a bad state of things. And yesterday we analyzed why this is happening. It reflects even worse underlying trends in human mass psychology. The problem is that it threatens the existence of a human species. Our only advantage as a species, is our ability to process raw information into knowledge, and then to disseminate this knowledge via instruments which includes authority sources and recipients, and do it over time in a way that's called education. If we dispense with all these, if everyone is as knowledgeable as everyone else, if everyone has as much information as everyone else, if everyone is as much as an expert as anyone else, if no intellectual has any standing or authority, if we are all equal, if your truth could be as valuable as my truth, if there is no such thing as truth, but it's all relative and debatable, and so on and so forth, we lose the only competitive advantage as a species that we ever had. Because we are lousy chimpanzees. We don't have fur. We don't have the same muscle per body weight as they do. They're much stronger, they're much more resilient, they're much more flexible. They can outrun us, they can outjump on branches. Chimpanzees are much better adapted to their environment than we are, because we do not have an environment. We're everywhere. We're in deserts, we're in cities, we're on ice sheets, we are everywhere. Because we don't have an environment, we are not specifically adapted. Our only advantage is the brain and its products. And the products of the brain must flow in a structured, authoritative way. And people must accept that they are inferior to some other people, and that this inferiority can be fixed only via personal investment. And that in some fields, they will never be superior. It's a narcissistic defense what's happening now. When you talk to people, they know everything about everything. They're resistant to learning. Their truth is as good as your truth. Facts, there's your facts and my facts. What the hell is happening? It's insane. And this is malignant egalitarianism.
I've noticed I've been working online solely since 2005. I've run and been involved with different self-defense forums and psychology forums over the last 13 years, and I noticed the online space getting more and more belligerent, more and more aggressive, particularly Facebook. Facebook was, you chat to your mates, there's a few pictures of you drunk, there's a cat falling off a skateboard, that's it. Now it's aggressive, it's angry, it's belligerent, it's extremely political, very, very political space. And then at the same time, I noticed in interaction with people in the public space, the tendency to interrupt, the tendency to shout over people, the tendency to... The really strange thing yesterday, we were filming in a room yesterday, and the girls who were doing the coffee would just come in and start talking. They had no idea what was happening in the room, and I'm thinking, that's that's an odd thing to do. You've no idea what... Hello, we've got coffee for you. It's like, shut the fuck up, there's a meeting going on in here, and we're filming, as you can see by the cameras. And you just think, there seems to be a general tendency towards a deterioration of boundaries. People are coming to me and saying, is there an increase in NPD? All the literature kind of indicates it's not likely that a ton of people are developing narcissistic personality disorder. But if the question is reframed to, are we swinging culturally to a more narcissistic way of relating to each other, I would say yes. A boundaryless, more entitled, with a lower impulse control, much less resilience, and much more, there is just this sentiment of belligerence and frustration and the desire to bash people. I made a video about the Socratic method for tackling political debate. And people came on the video and commented with statements about what I believe. And I was like, this is not debate, guys. You ask questions first. That's the point of the video. I think I'm hearing you say, ba-da-da-da. There's people coming going on, I hear from this video you're transphobic and racist. I was like, I didn't say anything in that. And there's this, I receive emails every week from people who are angry about things they think I said or they think that Sam has said. I infer that you said this. I'm like, well, look, are we now going to have a rule that I must defend everything that you infer? And you might say, well, yes, you should. It's a reasonable thing to do. And I say, hang on. If everybody in this system does that, I can take her email to me and say, well, I inferred from this that you drowned kittens this morning, you fucking animal, and I'm going to report you. That's my inference. Then we're into this weird deteriorating spiral where you're inferring something awful and ad hominem about me. Well, I'll just infer something back. I think the technology has created this malignant egalitarianism, which means facts don't matter, my feeling is as important as your facts, boundaries don't matter, politeness doesn't matter. You know, I'm getting older. I don't want to sound like I'm just getting old and just going, oh, you know, the youth of today don't have any respect. If we lose the boundaries of speech with each other, we're just going to end up shouting. Ultimately, if I'm physically larger, what's the difference between me going, I'm not going to talk, I'm going to shout. Well, shouting's not working, I'll start shoving. When does that end? When do we just start going, right, there's a total disruption, there's a total breakdown? So when Sam is saying this is of threat to the species, I 100% agree. I actually think this road that we're on, taken to its logical conclusion, will lead to, well, it can only lead to a devolution, because that's what it is. It's a disintegration of everything that's been built so far.
Yesterday we shot a few hours in between resuscitation of Richard with ambulances. Don't ask. Yesterday we shot a few hours about this group of phenomena, because it's a group of phenomena, and so on. I would like, actually, and you're going to see this. It's on camera, so it's going to be available on YouTube and
they'll be
and so on. So I don't want to repeat this because it's instead I want to offer a novel insight, new insight to you as well.
Okay.
Provoke you to punch me.
Okay.
So
sounds good.
No. So I think it all starts from being seen, and this ties very, very nicely with narcissism and with codependency. It all starts with being seen. We all have a need to be seen. We have this need to be seen starting in very, very early childhood. Because if we are not seen in early childhood, we are dead. These are the two options we have. Either we are seen by our parents, and when I say seen, I don't mean just to see. I mean to be noticed, to be cared for, to be nurtured, and so on and so forth. So to see, in psychology at least, is a much broader concept. So we need to be seen as children, because if we are not seen, we are dead. And we develop strategies as children to be noticed, to be seen. For example, we cry when we are not seen, and we thereby motivate, we create behavior in the adults around us. We learn to manipulate the act of seeing. We learn to obtain secure seeing. And then we grow up. As we grow up, we continue to demand that people see us. We insist that our parents see us. And if our parents don't see us, for example, if they treat us as an instrument of gratification, if they treat us as an extension of themselves, another arm, a tool to realize their fantasies and dreams, if they don't see us, we are not able to develop boundaries because we don't feel like a separate entity. And this process is called separation individuation. I'm getting there. Stop beating me. Stop stepping on my... So I'm trying to explain to you how deep what I'm about to say, how deeply rooted it is. And then we learn to manipulate other people to see us and to notice us. For example, not one of you is wearing the same clothes. Not one. Why? Did you ever stop to think? Why don't we all have the same clothes? Makeup, other human behaviors are all geared towards being noticed. We want to be noticed and seen. And then we grow up even more, and we begin to join mass groups. Remember, at the very beginning, we are confined to a group of 4. Mother, father, me, a sibling, or a dog. And then the group grows, and we have a class, and the class is 20, 30 people with a teacher. We want to be seen by the teacher and by our peers, but it's still 20, 30 people. It's a manageable task, and most of us succeed in it. And then we go to university, and it's already, 300, 400 people, and so on. And then we enter life. And when we enter life, we have 7.4 billion competitors. It becomes extremely difficult to be seen, to be noticed. And we begin to develop delusional thinking. One of these delusions is known as love. Love is about being seen. It is choosing someone to see us on a privileged basis, to notice us, to take care of us. It's a recreation, of course, of the parental role. It is not an accident that we don't have romantic relationships with 6 people at the same time, most of us. It's not an accident, because it's a recreation of the parental unit, of the basic unit. And indeed, studies have shown repeatedly and consistently that our mate choices of mate, have to do a lot with our parents. We choose father or we choose mother to a large extent. Actually, there was an experiment where women were given to smell sweaty T-shirts of men, and without variance, women chose the same chemical content of the sweat like their fathers. So that's an example. We have a lot of studies that show this. I won't tell you what the men chose. So it's important to be seen, but it's very, very, very difficult. So what happened is, as the population exploded, and because listen, when I was a kid, which, as you remember, was when the last brontosaurs were dying. When I was a kid, there were 3 billion people. Can you grasp this?
Yes.
There's 7.4 billion now. I mean, it's exploding. And so we have to fight much harder to be seen. And so we develop tools of being seen. And these tools are called Facebook and Twitter and whatever, Instagram now. Instagram is literally about being seen. The number of selfies in 2007, when Facebook was invented, was 3% of all posts. The number of selfies today is 63% of all posts. 63% of all posts include your face. There is no question that it's about being seen. But if you want to be seen, you need to be unique. Because if you are like everyone else, so uniqueness becomes critical. And how can you be unique? If you are not as knowledgeable as me. If you are not, then you are not unique, or you're unique in a bad way. So this fosters grandiosity. To be unique, you need to be outstanding. Literally, outstanding. So to be outstanding, you need to know as much as anyone else. You need to be an expert, you need to be a genius, you need to be... And this fosters grandiosity. And these are, in my view, the psychological roots of malignant egalitarianism. Because what happened is, if I'm a genius and you're not, some of you will claim that they're as much of a genius as I am, and then the others will look at them and say, wait a minute, it works, so I'm also a genius. And ultimately, all of you will claim to be my equal, a genius or whatever. And then genius loses its power. We disempower labels and we disempower words. And so we invent new ones. It's a race. It's an arms race. It's escalating. Behavior becomes belligerent and extreme and radical in order to be noticed. So I spotted a trend, for example. People are using expletives much more than 5 years ago. Today, it's very common to read a comment or to watch a video with the word fuck. It would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. Unthinkable. Today, every second comment opens with WTF. What the fuck? It's escalating. We need to escalate to be noticed. So I think this is the source of malignant egalitarianism and the psychological source.
Yeah.
And then it has many manifestations, which we discussed yesterday. So
we should be clear, I think, we're both pro-equality, generally speaking. You're left-ish? Leftish.
Leftish.
Leftish. So there isn't an implicit idea here that equal is wrong or equal is bad. We're not doing the crypto Jordan Peterson.
I'm not talking about equality. I'm talking about egalitarianism.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to make it
absolutely
clear.
Totally different thing.
Yeah.
Equality is granting everyone equal opportunity, equal access, and equal remuneration or compensation for efforts or work done. That's equality. Egalitarianism is the utterly sick counterfactual assumption that everyone is equal to everyone, as far as potential, as far as knowledge, as far as access to information, as far as anything. And of course, consequently, I am progressive, but anti-democratic. I'm against democracy, absolutely against it. I think democracy is a manifestation of malignant egalitarianism. I think it's utterly sick to think that every single person should have the same power, political power, as every other single person. Utterly sick, in my view. I know that you have all been brainwashed and conditioned to think otherwise in the West. By the way, if you go to other cultures, you will find that my arguments are pretty common. And until the 19th century, people could not vote unless they had a stake in society, for example, property, or minimum level of education. But today, every retard and his dog can vote. And most of the dogs vote. Retards don't know how, but the dogs vote. So I regard democracy as a sick manifestation of exactly this philosophy, of we are all equal, we should all be the same, we should all... Here's the irony. The more you try to be experts and geniuses and stars, and the more you're the same. It's self-defeating behavior, self-defeating. You are all different in different ways, but you're all trying to be the same. And that's the irony of it. And so, because it's self-defeating, it escalates. That's the... But to your question, I'm progressive, but I think there are many progressive things which are utterly sick, like democracy.
So the ranting against, there is now on the internet, there's a growing voice very much against the regressive radical left. We've never really discussed that. I don't know where do you stand on that? Do you see a radical left? Do you see that as being a threat? You know, they say in academia, the radical left is having a very negative influence. Would you agree with that?
History, first of all, left and right are very new political divisions. It's a new political division. It started by accident in the Parliament in France. It's history shows that was what used to be radical left 30 years ago is today's mainstream policy. Simple. If you came to if you visited the United States in 1820, the idea of social welfare would have been inconceivable. The idea of Medicare or Medicaid would have been inconceivable. The idea of income tax to redistribute money from the rich to the poor would have been inconceivable. All these are actually socialist ideas. All these have evolved first in Europe. So give it 30 years, and I think you will see most of these ideas become mainstream. I therefore don't it's radical because it's new.
Right.
Or it's radical because it's not yet adopted. But you see, even in the United States, someone like Bernie Sanders, who is an avowed, declared socialist. I mean, he garnered millions of votes. This would have been, think about the 1950s with McCarthy and so on. Who would have voted for a socialist in the 1950s? It's delayed reaction, but it will all become,
You think it's an inevitable sort
inevitable. All socialist and even communist ideas will ultimately become mainstream, even in so-called capitalist societies. I'm saying so-called because there's no more capitalism anywhere in the world, of course.
But you don't see that as a threat, because what comes with the radical left, and I would consider myself a leftist, but this propensity now towards political correctness, word policing, which then is actually becoming thought policing. Do you see that as a threat?
I don't think it has to do with the left. I think it has to do with any intrusive nanny state. So I think there was much more thought policing in Nazi Germany, for example, and no one would accuse Nazi Germany of being leftist. So thought policing goes with nanny state. The question, the more relevant question, I think, why do we need the state to be so involved in our lives? Why? Did you ever stop to think about it? Why do you need the NHS? Why all of you are pushing the state to be more and more involved in your life? And even if you are Republican in the United States, you are still pushing the state to be involved. In other ways, through the military. But why do we give the state such a role? Did you ever bother to ask yourself? Do you know that before Bismarck, before 1870, the state was 2.3% of GDP? Before Bismarck. Bismarck was the Prime Minister of Germany, and he was known as the Iron Chancellor. So, why?
You're allowed.
I'm sorry, it's a reflex.
You're allowed to do
I
that.
can't control it. It's a reflex.
You're the only person in the room who's allowed to do that.
It's a reflex I can't control. So,
A traumatic response.
the minute I say Chancellor, I cannot. I thrive. I cannot.
Goodbye, YouTube channel.
Stop
Goodbye.
Oh,
It's going live, Sam.
I controlled finally.
Hold it down. We discussed this.
But before 1870, so Bismarck was Prime Minister of Germany. Germany was a new country. Germany became a country essentially in 1871. The negotiations started in 1869 between the various states. Prussia had a problem, but 1871 it became a country. Before that, Germany was 338 principalities, 338 units, and it became a country. And then there was a Iron Chancellor, his name was Bismarck. Before Bismarck, the average role of the state in the economy was 2.3%. We measure the economy with something called gross domestic product, GDP. So the state was 2.3%. Then after Bismarck, it went up to 3, which was a major revolution, like increase by 50%. Bismarck was the first to introduce a pension system, a healthcare system, and so on. It was new. Bismarck, by the way, who was the manifestation of the right, a little to the right of Adolf Hitler. He was the one who introduced pension, healthcare, and so on. So it's totally stupid to say that these are leftist or rightist idea. I mean, this distinction is totally ahistorical. Today, do you know what is the role of a state? Can any one of you guess? How much of the economy is the state in a typical Western country? Can anyone, sorry?
46?
Higher, actually.
60.
If you take the central government and add the state governments and the municipalities and so on and so forth, there is not a country in the world, there's not a country in Europe or North America that is less than 50%. And many of them are 70 and 80%. In Asia, there are several countries where it's 20 to 30%. The United States, the federal government, is less than 30%. These are gigantic numbers. Can you digest this? They're enormous numbers. The government is the biggest employer. The government is the biggest advertiser. The government is the biggest monopolizer of power with military and police. The government is everything. Why did we do this? You did this. Why? Why did you do this?
It's the same thing. As
You must put up your hand. Oi! You have to put your hand up. No interrupting.
No, wait a minute. She's saying something interesting. What are you saying? Yeah, not bad.
It's exactly the same, because that's why I like your work, because you are bringing it to the social level. You know, when there is a narcissist and a codependent, yeah, it's the same thing. You give the power over and over again to the narcissist. So the state is the narcissist. It has become. It's so evident that I don't know what to say, but everybody is just sitting around and not doing anything about it, and I'm just going crazy.
Rise up, comrades. Rise up.
Yeah. I must hold this hand.
Not that rise up. That stays down.
It's not entirely, I mean, not bad. We created overweening, super dominant governments, states, because everything else failed, simply. We failed in every other type of experiment we ever attempted. And the biggest failure, ultimately, was capitalism. Between the 16th century and the 19th century, we had true capitalism in some parts of the world. The Baltic states, Netherlands, United Kingdom, and so on. We had true capitalism. True, unbridled. It didn't work. Then we tried communism. Didn't work. Then we tried Nazism and fascism. Didn't work. Nothing we tried worked. We failed. Every attempt to organize human life and the redistribution of wealth and regulate relationships between humans failed. Simply failed. So we gave up. We gave up and we said, okay, then you take it from here. We will withdraw and accept anything you do. This is the abrogation of personal responsibility. The nanny state, the current modern state, is a declaration, a confession, and an admission of failure and abrogation of personal responsibility. From now on, I am passive. Remember my presentation? It's about passivity. You're passive. That's it. That's how I see it.
The trauma. Yes, we are going to take questions. How your hand went up first, please.
Yeah, I think so many things to say. I'll try and...
Please, condense.
We're always in the process of becoming. So, since we first started agriculture, getting together in communities, etc., there's always been people who will try to take control and all. And I read something a few years ago that approximately something like there's 20 people waiting for someone to show them what to do for every person who's out there willing to do it. But I'm thinking about Britain over the last few hundred years. I'm thinking about moving from an agrarian society through the Industrial Revolution, the Enclosures Acts, some of which were sensible, consolidating fields from feudalism to make it more efficient. That made sense. But then the social engineering to push people into the towns to support capitalism. And when people are in situations of grinding poverty, they don't have time to stop and think about their situation. It's the same as when people are in a narcissistic, abusive relationship, going back to the previous seminar, they don't have time to stop and think because their head is just spinning all the time. So yes, we're complicit in creating, perpetuating what's going on, but at the same time, there's that we're just kind of like a pinball all the time, and it's really difficult. It's increasingly difficult to organise today, where more and more people feel voiceless. So we're shouting kind of into the wind. It's complex. I don't want to try and interweave the points too much, but think about the way that we become aberrant as individuals if we don't have secure attachment, and that's happening on a cultural level. So we've got societies where increasingly, the statement that a village raises a child is kind of dead in Western culture now.
Yes.
And the extended family, the community, those concepts are falling apart. But an example from my life in the last 2 days, which is positive use of Facebook, someone had a house fire and a shout went out, like they need clothes for their kids, they've lost everything. And within 3 days, this family, I'm shipping clothes from London to Yorkshire. That's a positive use of it. So that thing is still there in people, but we are just ground down. It's just modern life is just too heavy on everybody, and it's become this self-perpetuating monster. And it's like, how do we stop? How do we stop? At an individual level, it's really difficult. So now we have this situation which it rewards narcissistic, psychopathic leadership. So I don't know. I don't know what my question is. But
It was a series of statements. Some of them made sense. I think 1 or 2 of them. There isn't really, I don't think it's useful or possible to apportion blame. There are a lot of factors in it. You said it's very hard at an individual level. Alloplastic defense. I don't think so.
I mean, at an individual level, yeah, but trying to get together collectively, that's where it becomes really difficult.
Alloplastic defense. I actually think that what has happened is we have allowed ourselves to be, I nearly said euthanized, anesthetized by television, consumerism, drugs, alcohol, smoking. There are things that we do in this country that we think are normal that are weird as fuck. Friday and Saturday nights, I used to work nightclub security every weekend. I would stand there with, I think there was 5,000 of us total in Liverpool city centre, to deal with zombie hordes of people vomiting, screaming, punching, kicking, biting. And that was my job. And we all just went, well, this is England. We're one of the richest countries in the world. Look. The A&E will be full tonight with people bleeding from their faces from being glassed. And you think, how the fuck did we get here? How did we get to this place and start to call it normal?
That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think what we are ripe for, and I'm not the only person saying this, I heard Douglas Murray say this the other day very explicitly, and the way he said it was, it only takes one shit to come along now and proclaim a new religion and everyone will jump on board. People are desperate for direction. And I have to say, from a psychological point of view, it's kind of what we need. There is a hunger for it, and it's kind of what we need, because we are, as I was talking to Sam yesterday, he was talking about an unmooring. We need to become moored again. We need something that gives us a sense of purpose, a sense of community, a sense of, and I do wonder, I am more paranoid than Sam is. I have more time for conspiracy theories than he does. And I do wonder about some of the things that have happened in the last 20 years or so regarding Islam, and I think, well, I wonder if it makes sense to just dirty the waters there a little bit and to pollute something or a perception of something for a purpose, for an agenda. I'm not the only person saying that. There is evidence of this, multiple pieces of evidence of this out there. Why? Well, at one level, it might be that if everybody adopts a new religion, whether it was Islam or Christian mysticism, or we were talking about the Bogomils a couple of months ago, if you just withdraw from consumerism, you're not going to pay taxes. If you're not watching TV, you won't turn up to work on time, as everybody does every day. Why are we not fucking rioting? Everything you earn, you give back on tax. Only pay 20%. Yeah, except your fucking clothes, your food, your house, your roads, your car, the fuel you put in the car to go back to the slave camp and work. Oh yeah, but you only pay 20% in tax. Why are we not rioting? So there has been, I agree with you, I'm sympathetic, a slow beating down of this. But perhaps what is required is a philosophical revolution applied with religious fervor, but it can't be faith-based, I don't think, anymore.
I think I was not particularly clear how my two observations interrelate. So the first observation I made is that there was a problem with being seen. We were not seen because the number of people is huge and we needed to stand out, we needed to feel unique, so we invented these technologies, and these technologies help us to be seen, help us to feel unique. And the second thing I said is that we gave up our power to nanny states or governments, and it's apparently there's no connection between these two statements. Of course, there's a very big connection. As all our experiments failed, all our political experiments failed, we gave up on ourselves. And the reason we gave up on ourselves is we felt that we can no longer be seen. In the Industrial Revolution, you became a robot. If you've seen Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, you know. Industrial Revolution rendered you a robot or a slave, as Richard just said. Mega cities made you an ant. All the circumstances of our life conspired to render us invisible, to make the task of being seen very close to impossible. And so ultimately, as all others gave up on us, because what happened is a gradual process of institutions, collectives, giving up on us. You see, before the Industrial Revolution, you were a craftsman. You were a craftsman. You had reputation as a blacksmith. You had reputation as a goldsmith. You had the reputation as a farmer. Everyone knew Richard the goldsmith, Sam Vaknin the farmer. Or actually, it should be the reverse. I'm serious. You had professional reputation and pride in what you were doing. You were also pretty unique, because in a village there was one goldsmith, and so on. I mean, like, you had an identity. And then the Industrial Revolution took that pride away from you. Okay, so you said, okay, maybe, you know, I'm one of many, maybe I'm a cog in a wheel, and a wheel in a machine, but still I have my family. Then they took away the family from you. Families disappeared. Literally disappeared. There are no more families. The rate of marriage has plunged 70%. Less than 1/3 of people get married. And the rate of divorce is half of that. I mean, families vanished. Communities disintegrated as cities became megalopolises, and so on and so forth. So you had pride as a worker in your profession, it was taken away from you. You had pride in your family, there's no family. You had pride in the community, or at least a position in the community. That disappeared. Everything was taken away from you. You know from psychology, if I mistreat you and mistreat you and mistreat you and mistreat you, one of the most common reactions is an internalization of the abuse. You begin to feel worthless. You begin to feel like a bad object. If you're repeatedly told that you are nobody, nobody is a worker, nobody is a husband, nobody is a... Finally, you begin to say, I'm a nobody. This is the creation of the modern state. A mass declaration by everyone, we are nobodies. We are nobodies. Take away everything from us. Take from us the fruits of our labor. Take from us the ability to decide. Take from us the freedom. Take from us. Take from us, because we are nobodies. We've been told for 70 or 80 or 100 years that we are nobodies. You know what? We believe you. We are nobodies. So now, treat us as nobodies. And this is called the modern state. But what happened with had the modern state functioned properly, to this very day there would be no problem. We would all be mindlessly happy. Mindlessly happy. Because it feels very good not to have responsibility. I don't know if you know, the Gestapo, Geheime Staatspolizei in Germany, had a special unit which conducted opinion polls. Can you believe that? Opinion polls in Nazi Germany. What do you think about Hitler?
Whatever you say.
Hitler is shit. Boof. So they conducted opinion polls. There has never been a happier period in German history than during the Nazi period. Don't let anyone deceive you. They loved Hitler. They loved the period. They were the happiest, proudest. It was the most amazing moment of their lives. To this very day, many of them are nostalgic. It was a great period. Why? You didn't have to think. You had no responsibility. Everything was done for you. They were children. They were regressed to the state of being children. We love to be children. Is there any period that feels warmer, more wonderful than being children? So we gave up everything to the modern state and we became children, all of us. But then something happened. And that is what causes us to rebel. Because what we are doing now, we are rebelling. We are trying to regain the power, to take back the power via Facebook, via Twitter. We're trying to retake the power. Why are we doing this, if it feels so good? Because the modern state was hijacked, simply. Had it worked properly, like Nazi Germany, to this very day, all of us would be extremely happy. But we are not happy. We know, we have studies. People are extremely unhappy. Why? Because the state was hijacked. And it was hijacked by elites. The elites hijacked the state and then abused the state. And this rendered the state dysfunctional. All modern states are highly dysfunctional. And so we couldn't cheat ourselves anymore. We couldn't lie to ourselves anymore. And so we invented social media and so on. And now we have something that Jose Ortega y Gasset called the revolt of the masses. We as masses were revolting against the elites, by the way, not against the state. We are revolting against the elites who hijacked the state. Donald Trump went to Washington and he said, I'm going to clean this swamp. What did he mean? He meant, I'm going to geschlimpf the elites that stole the country. I'm going to kill, destroy, imprison, whatever. Hillary Clinton, the epitome, the quintessence of this hijacking process. So it's a rebellion against the elites. Will it work? Of course it will not work. It will not work for a very simple reason. The elites own the instruments that you are using to rebel. And they will let you vent, let off steam, up to a point. When this point comes, these tools will be taken away from you. And this is what we called yesterday self-limitation. Suddenly you will see that most of these tools become unavailable or under certain conditions, restricting conditions or whatever. They will not let you. Don't kid yourself. We have created a juggernaut. We have created a monster. It was hijacked by a small group of people. And that's the end of the story. Simple. Do you know, when I say a small group of people, how many people I'm talking about? And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, by the way. I detest conspiracy theories. Everything I say is facts. Do you know how many people I'm talking about? 20,000 people globally. Do you know that the 100 richest Americans, the 100 richest people, own wealth and money equal to 3.9 billion people? Do you know that the 100 richest Americans own wealth and money equal to all the blacks in America, plus all the Hispanics in America, plus 40% of the white population? That's what I'm talking about. 100 people, individuals, not companies. 100 people. This is what we've come to. In America, 1,000 people hijacked the state. Do you know what we're talking about? American federal budget is $4.1 trillion. 4,100,000 million dollars. This was hijacked by these people. There's no way to fight this. I am utterly pessimistic about the success of the revolt of the masses. There's no way to fight it. It's too late. We have created instruments and monsters that overtaken us. However, what it will create is rising narcissism. Because if you can't fight in reality, you fight in fantasy. Those who cannot cope with reality retreat, withdraw into delusion and fantasy. And that, ladies and ladies, is narcissism. Narcissism is a fantasy of grandiosity because you can't be grandiose in reality. Or your grandiosity in reality is always insufficient. You want more. And this will be the solution. You will all become narcissists. And then I will not have anything to do. I will not have work. And then I will establish a party.
When you see Spartan Life Coach suspended, you'll know
I will
exactly why.
establish a party and everything will be okay. You know?
Just put your hand over this at the camera for a second. There was a hand went up over there. Yes?
It's hard to, I can't hear you.
Have you got any idea, Sam, about what would you say to someone like myself, like your partner, your boss and partner, what is the best action against all of this pessimism that you told us about that makes me feel really
I'm the hope offerer. Sam brings despair and doom.
I bring despair und Doom. Dummkopf.
Dummkopf. Das ist der Dummkopf.
Yeah.
The hope, I would say, is probably in the room here and in the people who think this way and who are looking for solutions. The hope is in your despair, that you'll try and find something. As Sam just said, if the state had not been hijacked, we would have all been quite content. We would have just trundled along. So this crisis, to be trite and to repeat the cliche, does actually represent an opportunity. But it will be painful. And not everybody, I don't think everybody is going to make it. In fact, I'm 100% certain that they won't. The outcome that Sam's talking about of people just becoming narcissists is already very, very well underway. The zombification of the nation is very, very well underway.
True.
You can save yourself, perhaps some people close to you, but yes, you're looking like you want to ask me another question. And then you turn around and you...
I've jumped on board, not a religious, but a spiritual bandwagon, and I just wanted to say something in response to what you said about the situation, because I, as a person, jumped on board the bandwagon by, was started by Drunk Habits In, which is a mindfulness thing. I'm doing a teaching program next year.
Are you marketing in my seminar? Gulag. Salt mine.
Minimum gulag.
The solution to the crisis that is happening, not an airy-fairy thing like you've gone about, or sometimes, but a kind of a in-the-moment
Characterization noted.
Finished.
Oh, thank you. Danke schön. Ja. Du. Don't you start with the hand thing, will we? Yeah.
I thought your talk was really interesting. I have to thank you both, first of all, because it's opened the doors of narcissism to me. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was being assaulted by. And you two were my first ports of call that actually sent links of your talk and your talk.
Oh, thank you.
I realised what was going on. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
The second thing is, I completely agree. I think that the capitalism, communism, all these systems have failed. And I myself, I'm African, I'm East African, and they're very nicely exported around the world as well. So we all share in that failure everywhere we are. Very nice. But for me, I mean, in my way, I think, and I don't agree with the pessimism, because I think as human beings we're optimistic by nature. I think we have to have an optimism.
Not a human being. This is Sam Vaknin. See, do you see? They keep with their bloody malignant optimism.
Stop insulting me. I mean,
I think we're optimistic by nature. So for me, I completely agree that everybody's sort of become this whole culture of nobody. Everybody's a nobody. But actually, I mean, I have children, and people do. I look at the education system, I think that very much purports that whole system we're talking about, that everybody is, there's a lack of respect across the board, even as children, the lack of respect for teachers, for society, you see on the streets, lack of respect of life, and I think the answer is on a spiritual level. It has to be, because capitalism, communism, all the other isms did not really address spirituality, and I think that's what elevates us above the animal kingdom, that we're not merely economic entities, beginning at one point and ending at another, procreating in between. There is something else, and there has to be something else, and that's what this option is.
Okay, I'd like to convert, that's a good statement. I'd like to convert it into a question. Do you think there is any use or worth in spirituality at all?
I would have been delighted to answer had I known what is spirituality. But since I don't know what is spirituality, and if you're pushed to the corner, I suspect you don't know either. So I would like to reframe your statement in some other way. We can save ourselves. We are drowning. It's the Titanic. Titanic with 7.4 billion on board. Of course, the Astors are in first class, and so they think they will be saved. They weren't, by the way. They died. But they thought they would be saved because they were in first class, and first class was closest to the lifeboats. So, but we're all going to die. The Astors, the ones on the third class. What was the name of the actress in Titanic? I mean,
Her, yeah. Thank you.
yeah. Unless we take hold of the Titanic and divert it. There are two reasons to be hopeful, unfortunately. The first reason is that we know there is an iceberg. There's one major difference between us and the Titanic. The people on the Titanic did not know there is an iceberg until they crashed into it. We know there is an iceberg. Well, that's a major advantage, of course. The second thing is that we have two options to rebel. Rebellion is called for. I don't see anything less drastic than rebellion changing the course of things. And if the course of things is not changed, I am extremely pessimistic about the future of the species, as a species, not nuclear war. Nuclear war has never been a real threat. Nuclear war was toys in the hands of military retards to threaten each other. So nuclear war has never been a threat. This is a threat. Social media is a much more serious threat than any number of nuclear wars has ever been. We are under serious attack on various fronts of our intellect, of our capacity to study the world and manage within it, and so on and so forth. So only rebellion will work. And there are two ways to rebel: transcendentally or from within. Now, to reframe what you've said, you are a proponent of transcendental rebellion. Say, well, if we transcend our economic being, our existence, our whatever, the state, police, whatever, if we transcend our reality, or physical reality at least, then perhaps the rebellion will succeed. I don't know. Spirituality is transcendence.
I think spirituality is a component. I'm not saying it's the whole thing. I'm saying it has to be an understanding or an acceptance. There's something beyond it. It has to be a purpose of life.
I don't know what is beyond. I don't know. I am a physicist. I'm a physicist, and I'm also married to the truth. Lydia doesn't know, but I'm married to the truth. I'm a bigamist. And I am very, very, very strict about language. Extremely. I like to know what I'm talking about and to define terms. I don't know what is spirituality, and I definitely don't know what is beyond. I'm trying to translate you. And I think what you're trying to say is that we need some transcendence for the rebellion to succeed. If we base it only on economics, only on politics, it will fail. There has to be something beyond. And the second version, the second approach, is that we should rebel from within and take over the levers of power. So social media is an example of us trying to take over the levers of power, because now everyone can publish a book. Everyone can make a television documentary or documentary. Example, Richard. It would have been unthinkable for Richard to make a documentary 20 years ago, not because he's a stupid guy. Well, modify this. But because of gatekeepers. There were people keeping the gates, and they've never allowed Richard to cross the gate. So now the gates are broken, and the gatekeepers are gone. So now we can make documentaries, we can write books, publish them, and so on. So we have already taken some of the levers of power. But then our mistake is that we have taken these levers of power, and then we said, but everyone can use them. Malignant egalitarianism. If anyone can publish a book, everyone should publish a book. Yeah. If anyone can make a documentary, everyone should make a documentary. Why? Why did we say that? Because we are rebelling against elites. We have adopted the democratic principle because we are rebelling against elites. We are anti-elitist. Because we are anti-elitist, we became super democratic. It's like if you are fighting a narcissist, you maybe will try to out-narcissize the narcissist. You will be even more narcissistic. So it's the same here. Like if I'm fighting these 100 rich people and so on, I'm going to be as powerful as them. They publish book, I'll publish book. They make a documentary, I'll make a documentary. They put their men in Washington, I'll put my men in Washington. Donald Trump. You understand? So it's like, and so this created malignant egalitarianism. And inadvertently, another existential risk. Because here's a surprise for you. Not everyone should publish a book. We dispense with the gates, which was an act of brave rebellion. But then we dispense with the gatekeepers, which was a suicidal act. We gave up quantity, which was an act of brave rebellion. But then we gave up quality, which is a suicidal act. We went too far, actually. That's the source of my pessimism. The rebellion is happening and has happened. It's in the process. But we went too far. And those of us who feel excluded become narcissists. They rebel in delusion. They become delusional as a form of rebellion, or fantasists. They develop fantasies. So we have two dysfunctional rebellions going on. One of them, we are all equal, we can all publish books, we are all Albert Einstein minimum, etc., etc. That's one form of rebellion. It's sick, it's dysfunctional, it's a threat to our existence. And the second type of rebellion, the same. I'm a genius, I'm Albert Einstein, but in my mind. That's called narcissism. These are the two rebellions that emerged. Why didn't we come with a functional rebellion? I have no idea. It seems we keep, as masses, we keep self-defeating. All the time, we self-defeat. I don't know, maybe we don't want to succeed. In psychology, we know that if someone repeats a certain behavior, he wants it. That's what he wants. Maybe we don't want to succeed. Maybe we are afraid to be responsible again, to have to make decisions again. Maybe we're terrified.
That makes sense. What do you mean by succeed? When you talk about success, how do you define that?
Success?
So honestly,
Becoming again autonomous, truly autonomous entities who make their own decisions, manage their own lives, create their own environment within which they are happy and functional. We don't have these powers. None of the powers I mentioned. We don't have today.
has that ever existed?
I'm sorry?
Has that ever been an existence?
Of course. Yes.
Where?
Of course it has existed. It didn't exist fully, but it existed much more than now. It's never been an ideal state. That is an ideal state. But it existed, it existed. Now it's much worse than it's ever been. Let's put it this way. If you were, for example, a farmer or a craftsman in medieval Europe, your chances to come across someone who would take the fruits of your labor and constrain you and enslave you, these chances existed. Militaries were crossing in and out, but they were much less than you think. They were actually Nothing. I mean, vast majority of people spend all their lives in the same place and nothing ever happened to them. And they never came in touch with the state. There was no state. Their property was never confiscated. The fruits of their labor were always theirs. There was no taxation, nothing. So there were such periods. Of course, ancient Greece. Of course, big parts of Middle Eastern history of the Middle East, and so on and so forth. So in ancient Judaism, for example, it was forbidden to take a census. We have a prohibition in Judaism to take a census. Do you know why? There was fear that if someone will take a census, he will use it to tax the people, for taxation. Everyone conspired not to give up freedom. The fight was not to give freedom. Look at what we fight for, what we have been fighting for in the last 140 years. We've been fighting to give up freedom. Italians were fighting to establish the Italian state. What is the Italian state? To give up freedom, to give up autonomy, to give up money and property. Germans were fighting to establish the German state. Same. Everyone was fighting to reduce freedom, to reduce personal autonomy, to reduce responsibility, to give up on things. It was self-denial.
But I think that's in the West. Isn't that a Western concept?
No, not in the West at all. What are you talking about? In Iraq in the 1940s, there was a nationalist movement in Egypt.
I'm thinking colonial times. I mean, where, borders, you look at the borders of many countries, they're straight lines, aren't they? These are things imposed.
No, but wait a minute. What happened after the colonial times? Colonial times ended in Africa. I worked in Africa many years. Colonial times ended in Africa in the 1960s. What's the first thing you've done? The first thing you've done.
Neo-colonialism.
Yes, you created states. States. And you put in charge kleptocrats who stole all your money and everything. The first thing you did after you were liberated was to unliberate. First thing.
But I know from my family experience, the people who were in power in these places were educated in institutions that were built on the
I don't see the relevance. You adopted a model of unfreedom.
Correct.
And to this day, if you see a demonstration, it's not likely to be a demonstration against the state paying you a higher salary. It's likely to be a demonstration that the state should pay you a higher salary. It's likely to be a demonstration that the state should give you more medical services. It's likely to be a demonstration that the state should regulate certain industries or provide for safety or whatever. It's likely to be a demonstration to demand more state, not less state. This is slave mentality. I will tell you a story, which you may not like. After the Civil War, the Proclamation of Emancipation by Abraham Lincoln was in 1863, but it did not become known in the South, normally, until 1865. When the Proclamation of Emancipation of the slaves was announced finally in the South after the defeats and the signing of the ceasefire, many blacks refused to leave the plantations, absolutely refused to leave the plantations. There were demonstrations and protests of blacks against their liberty, the newfound liberty. And actually, at the end, well over 80% of the blacks, 80%, not 8, decided to remain as slaves. Only they didn't call themselves slaves, they called themselves sharecroppers. It was slavery. It was feudal system. Totally feudal system. They remained as slaves. We have all been inculcated to be slaves. And the only demands we dare to pose, are to be more enslaved or to redistribute the wages of slavery. This is what's going on. I don't know, we started a dual rebellion and it degenerated into narcissism and into bloody Instagram. This is how a rebellion looks. If this is how it looks, I prefer Washington. Have you ever looked at Instagram? Retarded teenagers with 16.8 million followers peeling bananas online. I have seen chimpanzees with more grace and sense of aesthetics. And this is our rebellion. This is how we're going to liberate ourselves. Or raging narcissists. So if we have to choose an iconoclastic figure, someone who will destroy the system, we choose the quintessential system man, Donald Trump, who in addition is a retard and a narcissist. Or we choose Bolsonaro in Brazil, or Duterte in the Philippines. Or, I mean, horrors of horrors. Insane, deranged, mentally sick sadists. This is our rebellion. This is how it looks. It's not going well. It's not going well. Spirituality. Perhaps the fault of the so-called spiritualists is that they fail to define what it is. And what the fuck do they want of me? I mean, if I have to file for divorce, I know that I have to hire a lawyer, and the lawyer will do A, and then I will do B, and then there's an algorithm. Spiritualists fail to, or people with spiritual leanings, fail to come with algorithms. And when they codify their spirituality, which is what we call religion, they come up with malignancies in all religions. Evangelism, ISIS, and Jewish settlers. Religions are malignant manifestations of these so-called,
My poor YouTube comment section, it's going to be destroyed. Oy vey, oy vey.
Listen, don't contradict me. I told you not to contradict me ever. You Jew. You fucking Jew.
Sorry, YouTube. Sorry. Sorry, just to follow up on your point there. There is, when we talk with certain presuppositions. It's modern language. We're speaking English, and there are little coordinates buried in the linguistics. There's this thing of free will, and it's not a conversation we can have here. It's not appropriate, but it would be nice to sit and just discuss philosophically, just go back and forth on the notion of free will. We talk as though there is free will. And maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but we kind of need to review the way we think about it. Humans are repeaters. They are herd instinct mammals. We stick together, we copy unconsciously, and we're easy to condition. So, what you were saying before, it's like, yeah, but, the free will issue, like we say, there was choice to stay on the plantations. There was a choice. Yes, but no, but yes, but no. Is there choice? Is there not choice? You can't. History moves in one direction. Time moves in one direction. You can never put the toothpaste back in the tube. So, this thing with religion and spirituality and the progression of humanity, I do wonder where we are now. We might just not be very robust as humans in the way we were in the times that were referenced just now, which is only 200 or 300 years. I wonder what we would have been like 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. We're talking about people, we're reading their words, we're going, we know what these people were. We know how they lived, we know where they lived, how they dressed, so we know them. And the point I'm making is kind of a little bit ambiguous and a bit vague. I don't think we do. I don't think we know, but I would say, and again, this is a step probably too far, based on how we punished, it was probably those people were very strong in a way that we can't fathom. What was done in this country to the rebellion in Yorkshire, the genocide of thousands of people, just because the farmers said, we're not fucking paying tax. King? What fucking king? We're not paying. They were massacred. English people, just murdering English people. And when they caught them, I won't go into detail, but what was done to them was extreme. And I always think where the punishment is very harsh, as in slavery, the mutilation, the hobbling. Why? Because the master fears the power of the rebellion. If this was us and somebody said, behave yourself or you get this stick, we'd all be like, fucking hell, we won't do anything. You wouldn't need to go that far. So I think where there's a problem of trying to compare us today with us in times gone by, and there's this issue of free will. We're discussing, and there's an assumption of free will, which I would generally tend to reject. We've argued about this many times. There was a hand that went up over there before. Yes?
I just feel a little bit brainwashed after listening to all the information, and I kind of want to...
You are brainwashed.
Yeah, being with me. Certainly.
I
This is your enlightenment.
I have a hidden agenda which I will inform you later.
I just wanted to defend myself and just in general against narcissism, that people strive to be free and that people don't want to be slaves, and they just burst out and on an individual basis they find their strength and they burst out and they fight against it. And you know that the slaves in America, they felt it's like somebody having accommodation, say even in London where it's really expensive. Where the hell do you go? So they didn't have anywhere to go, so they stayed as sharecroppers, but they were free in their minds, and they're free now. So I'm arguing with you, Sam.
You're arguing with me as well on that one.
I think it would come as a shock to most blacks that they're free.
Yeah.
It would come as an utter shock to most blacks in the United States that they're free. 150 years after the Civil War, most of them would claim that they're not free. And most of them would be right.
Well, they're trying to do stuff by getting educated.
We're all trying to be free. It's commendable. I didn't say we're not trying to be free. I said we are failing.
I think if you're in America, you'd be shocked for saying what you're saying.
Shot. I wouldn't want him shot. I need him. You can't shoot him.
Why?
I'll be the one who gets
No,
shot.
wait a minute. Why only in America?
You're saying he's not important enough here. This is
I'm not
bloody
important to be
righteous.
shot. Not important to be shot now. I mean,
Yeah,
I
this-
think there are two things that would explain why we are paralyzed. Because to be a slave means to be paralyzed, essentially. You hand over higher cognitive functions to another person. That other person makes decisions and so on. So it's a form of paralysis. Why are we paralyzed? I think we're paralyzed for two reasons: complexity and uncertainty. The world today is much, much more complex than ever, and much less certain than ever. Consider, for example, someone who lived in the 15th, 16th, and 17th century. The price of bread has been identical in all these 300 years. There was zero inflation. Inflation is a modern phenomenon. He also traveled on average 23 miles. That was the average travel of a person in his lifetime. Vast majority of people spend their entire life in the same village. Going to town was an adventure of a lifetime. We have books documenting this. Read Chaucer. Pilgrimage. Pilgrimage was the exception. I mean, like. So people stayed in one place, prices were the same. They could easily predict their environment, nature. They were very close to nature. They knew how to read nature. They also could predict the human environment because it was cruel, unforgiving, and you knew very well what will happen to you if you confront a knight. So even that was clear. Things were clear. Amount of uncertainty was very low, and nothing was complex. You were born, you adopted your father's trade, he taught you, you taught your son, you had a son, of course, you got married, no one divorced. I mean, everything was simple. Simple. Alvin Toffler, in his book, Future Shock, and in his second book, The Third Wave, calculated bits of information, how many bits of information we absorb. In 1980, I think 2 or 3, when he published The Third Wave, in every single day, we were exposed to an amount of information equal to the lifetime of a person in the 18th century. Every single day. That was in 1983, when the dinosaurs walked the earth. I think this would be a minute today, and I don't think I'm exaggerating. Every minute, you know what? Hour, I'll compromise with you. Every hour, we absorb the total experience of a human being in the 18th century. Take my field, physics. If you studied physics in 1900 in Heidelberg, Einstein, you knew everything you had to know well into 1920, because it was a tumultuous era. If you studied it in 1820, you knew everything there was to know until 1920. Same knowledge remained for 100 years. But if you studied physics in 1920, by 1930 you were outdated. And if you study physics today, the amount of knowledge in physics multiplies, doubles, every 2 years and 7 months. You can lose your entire knowledge in 2 years and 7 months. Take medical doctors. Medical doctors were certified once in a lifetime. Today, in the vast majority of countries, medical doctors have to be certified every 5 years. Why? Because their knowledge is obsolete in 5 years. Consider your smartphone now and 5 years ago. Now, this sounds like progress. It's not. It's destabilizing. We are terrified of uncertainty. We are change-averse animals. We're animals. Change-averse, risk-averse, uncertainty-averse. And elites became elites because they realized that. And some of them were psychopaths, so they were not risk-averse. They loved risk. They adopted it. Some of them were highly intelligent people, so they leveraged complexity. Some of them created products that took away your risk and became multi-billionaires. Some of them enhanced your capacity as a human being to cope with complexity. And this is what we call computers. And so on. And they became rich. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. Anyone who got involved with complexity and uncertainty became a member of the elite. And anyone who was subjected to uncertainty and complexity ended up in this seminar. This is the truth. Now the elites have a vested interest to increase complexity, to increase uncertainty, and to isolate you. I told Richard yesterday, and I saw in his eyes that it came as a kind of a realization, a kind of a shock.
A heartbreaking shock.
I told him, listen, Facebook does not want you to love or to have a romantic relationship. They don't want you to have a romantic relationship. And Richard thought for him and said, well, I told him, because it takes your eyeballs away. If I have a beautiful woman, I would look at her, not at Facebook. They need my eyeballs. They monetize my eyeballs, my attention. Anything that competes with my eyeballs or my attention is an enemy, and they will eradicate it. These technologies atomize, isolate, force you to withdraw, increase complexity, increase uncertainty. These are the tools of the trade to keep you a slave. Make no mistake about it.
Are you saying that love is the cure?
Give me a break.
I want that on a meme on Instagram. Love is the cure with a unicorn and a rainbow. Sam Vaknin says love is the cure. Yes, madam. I'll come to you. I know, but I am being democratic, and you have spoken many times. Yes.
You have spoken.
You have spoken. You have spoken. I permit you to not like it. I'm comfortable with you not liking it. Yes, madam.
Just would like to comment on a few moments. The first, when you're talking about communism, socialism system which failed, I would see it just rather as a system which is focusing on profit. Because there is no such a thing that well-being of human being, what we will do so our children would be better, or women would be happy in society, or the humanity will have this health. It's just profit, 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 and everything is done for the sake of profit, which is artificial, which is, we already came out of this natural environment, because in the universe, in nature, there is no such a thing as constant profit. There are cycles, and we forgot what is it universal laws are. So this is just the first part. The second is, it's true that this scientific technological progress, which is also the product of profit
motive. Motive.
So it's intensifying our life because, and in a sense, it's this enormous information which bombarded us and complicate our life. And as far as I remember, the program, school program in physics, intensity is in reverse proportion to the time. So if we're talking about solution, I think the solution would be
if using all modern possibilities to decrease the time of work. If you can imagine that you are staying in the work, just a second, I know it's very revolutionary.
You're a neo-Marxist.
Yeah. It's probably give us some sort of, I don't know, some opportunity to breathe. But if you just imagine what it means if you spend less time in work, because it's illusion. It's, of course, employee want you, and he is under illusion that if you stay all the day long, that he will achieve or everything would be achieved. It's illusion. So somebody has to open that it's illusion, and all this long time doesn't justify. So if you imagine just you work less, you have more time for family, for children, and you have some capacity to process this complex arrangement we have now in our life. So I'm not sure, maybe somebody can add, but what maybe can see more opportunities, how it could be arranged.
When the lumpen proletariat have time on their hands, they will gather up arms and slaughter the elite. No, we keep them in the factories where they belong.
Did she say children?
Yes.
You don't
So-
have time spent on Facebook.
Yeah, I think there would be a vested interest in keeping people stressed, tired, occupied, focused out. But you're right. I mean, it's a lovely world.
Think straight, because apparently we are under huge stress. Nobody thinks straight.
Correct.
But
We don't want them to think straight, comrade. They'll rise up.
levels to that, and I'm not sure if you're familiar, but now
No, this is not supported by data. For example, there is no correlation between the happiness index. There is a happiness index. There is no correlation between happiness index and amount of leisure time. For example, France has more leisure time than people in France have more leisure time than in Scandinavia. People in Scandinavia are much happier. People in some provinces of Canada have much less leisure time than other people, and these people are happier. So we don't have correlation between leisure time and happiness. But I think we don't have this correlation because we don't have leisure time. The thing is that what we used to define as leisure has also been gobbled up, eaten up. I mean, in the past, I remember that as a kid, for me, leisure was to sit back and daydream and think and look at a butterfly and then tear its wings. What, you are not doing the same? Am I alone? I'm all alone, please. Reading is a very different experience to surfing the internet and reading on the internet. Completely different experience. It has tactile, olfactory, and other dimensions. It's much slower. It's serial. I mean, it's totally different experience. So, and this kind of leisure time is gone, dead. Today, if you have leisure time, you will also measure it in terms of productivity.
Yes.
How many tweets? How many Facebook posts? How many likes did you receive? Everything is ranked. Everything is quantified. Everything is measured. Even if you go to a restaurant, how much time have I been here? What did I eat? How many dishes? What's the relative price? I mean, was the price good? So we have been conditioned not to have leisure time. It's not only work. At work, we have a compounding factor. Most of us hate what we do. That's a fact, by the way. So that's a compounding factor. But even when we do what we like to do, it had been transformed into the equivalent of work. We work all the time. No wonder we are utterly depleted and exhausted.
yes,
All the time we work.
I spoke to the teacher for my daughter on one occasion, and he said to me, look, you wouldn't imagine, because I was studied till 1 p.m. or 2:30 the maximum, and now children spend the most of the day in the
Yeah, until late in the evening, true.
So he said, look, they have so much information and so much subject to learn.
True.
You don't need to get him into another section in, I don't know, because after school there is extra tutorial.
Extracurricular activities, yeah. No.
So he said
True.
they need time to process because the brain receives
This leads
so they need this
to another phenomenon.
do nothing.
This leads to another phenomenon which would also explain why we remain slaves, why our rebellions fail. Because we are rebelling. Let it be clear. It's not that we are not rebelling. We are rebelling. We've been rebelling for decades. But we keep failing. In a way, Nazism, fascism were also forms of rebellion.
Yeah.
They're all rebellions, but we fail all the time. And the reason I think one of the main reasons we fail all the time is the extension of childhood. You see, childhood is a totally modern concept. If you go to literature in the 17th century, 18th century, 16th century, you will not find children. You will find young adults, or young monsieur, young adults. Children, only royalty had children. So only in royalty, some of the children, by the way, not all of them, were called children. But the concept of childhood, and by the way, the concept of motherhood, for you to understand, are totally modern, fictitious inventions. They have nothing scientific to back them up. And childhood used to be until age 9 or 10. In other words, until the point that you could begin to contribute to the economy of the family. So people were, so-called children, went to work on the fields when they were 8 or 9, joined mother in the market to market the produce, etc., etc. Childhood lasted until today. Childhood ends at age 30. I am not kidding. Education lasts on average until age 26. And one third of offspring live with their parents until age 31. 1/3. In some countries, much higher. For example, Italy. So, childhood continues today until age 35 or 35, I would say. No, not less, no. Because people get married, men get married on average now at age 33. 35. In Judaism, ancient Judaism, the Talmud, you were expected to procreate when you were maximum 18. 18 was like a lost case. Maximum 18, and a woman could procreate even at age 12. We have cases on the Talmud of age 12. In Yemen, until recently, age of consent was 12. So, and this was postponed, procreation. Now, this has two effects. As children, you cannot rebel effectively. You don't have the tools as children. Your mindset is not built to rebel. And second thing, if you don't have children, you don't have incentive to rebel. Period. Don't kid yourself. Singles, mingles, all this bullshit. It's not working. If you don't have children, you don't have a vested interest in the future, only in the present. And let no one tell you otherwise. Your interest then is present-oriented. And in the present, you can medicate yourself. You can self-medicate with men. So we have an epidemic of histrionic behavior, adultery, and so on. You can self-medicate with drugs, with alcohol, with social media. No end to addictions. So we replaced addictions, procreation for addictions. And so no interest in the future and no tools to reshape the future because you're all children until age 30, 35. And that goes a long way towards what you're saying.
We have time for one more question. I'm afraid if I don't ask you to ask a question of what might happen to me afterwards. So please. But if you could, like,
What's going to happen to you now?
well, one sentence with a question mark on the end would be lovely. Thank you.
All right, so, yeah. So, I want to debate you a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Because a few years ago, if you remember, we met in a meetup group.
Yes.
Yeah. And
How could I forget?
We talked about the HBA axis. And then you suddenly disappeared from the meetup group that you created.
What do you mean? Physically?
He was with me. He was with me.
You disappeared from the meetup group. There were 200 and something people there who you completely abandoned.
This is a total fantasy.
Just a second.
I hijacked him and did not release him until he agreed to make interviews.
Wait a moment. Yeah, I was trying to get in touch with you and get help and stuff. didn't happen.
Because it didn't happen in reality.
Wait.
Who cares about reality?
Just a second. Then you went online and it was impossible to get in touch with you. So what I'm saying is, I created, by the way, because I really appreciate both of your work.
Thank you.
Both of you and your work. And I said, and a lot of people moaned how expensive your course was during, in the comment section. And I created.
Do you know how much money I paid her to do this to you?
Fucking hell. Fucking hell.
I envy you.
Don't-
I envy you. I want to destroy it. Yeah.
And I created a Facebook group called Voice, and I said, for the mourners, I'm going to help you to get to his cause, and I'm going to help you create a community. 3 or 4 people signed up, but they were still mourning, but they signed up at least. Some of them really appreciated it. So
Madam, what is your question?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay?
We really do need to wrap soon.
Okay, I also want to create a foundation for people who could not get to your courses because of the price, because the mainstream system is not helping you to finance it. How many people are going to help this foundation
Thank you for coming.
to be successful too, so we can pay Richard's work and get more people in the system so they can heal?
It sounds like a wonderful idea. Thank you for suggesting it. Ladies and gentlemen, we really are out of time. Sorry I couldn't take your final question. Thank you all so much for making the effort to be with us here on a Sunday. Thank you.